Welcome to the Gives in the Bank recruiting podcast. It's been a little bit, but we're back. Going to be back on a regular schedule here starting this week, and actually we'll have a few episodes for you guys coming up here the next couple of days. But we updated our Ohio rankings. We are doing the class of 2021 first. We're putting a bow on the 2021 class final rankings post February signing day. Top 25 is up on BuckeyeScoop.com. Everyone can go in there and read the full list. We're going to break things down here a little bit. Of course, I'm always joined by Bill Greene, so he's here with me to kind of take a look at the list. We're not going to do all 25 guys. We're gonna do kind of the top half, the top 12, kind of count down from 12. And kind of comment on each guy, talk about each guy. And like I said, you can get the full list of 25 on BuckeyeScoop.com. And we're going to update 2022 here in the coming days as well and do kind of the same thing with that class. But let's get going here with 2021. Coming in at number 12, Rod Moore, safety, Clayton Northmont. A guy that Bill, you covered a lot. I didn't cover so much, was a fringe Ohio State recruit at times, but was not a guy they offered. Bill, with your previous stop at 247, you covered Rod quite a bit. Your thoughts on Rod Moore? We didn't star rank these guys. Would you have him as a 4-star or kind of go from there and then kind of just break down? What are your thoughts on Rod?
Yeah, I would have him as a lower 4-star. It's funny because I kind of ran into him. Oh man, it was a while ago. And so many times, you and I will go to a game to see player A, and then it's like, wow, who's that guy over there? And I saw Rod when they actually they played Trotwood Madison. And, he was a junior, and I went to see Sammy Anderson, of Trotwood, a heck of a player now at Cincinnati. And boy, did Rod stick out. I mean, just a fundamentally sound player. I think that Clayton Northmont program is a great program. I think they developed their kids so well. And, I love the speed, the explosion. I think he's going to play safety at Michigan. I would not be shocked if he played corner at all. And I think in a year, like when Ohio State landed the superstars this year and J.K. Johnson, and Hancock, and one time they had Devonta Smith committed. They were getting Denzel Burke. There was no room for Rod Moore. But I think in a normal year, the last couple of years, the way they've missed on DBs. I mean, Rod Moore could play for Ohio State, in my opinion. So I think he's a heck of a player. He's a heck of a kid. And I'm really high on him. And I think Michigan is getting just a heck of a player there in Rod Moore. And I really expect him to be a multi-year starter for them. And, maybe a guy plays in the NFL someday if things go well. But I like him a lot.
Yeah, you've seen more of him than I have. I covered him more than I did, but was always impressed with his speed, athleticism, range. And I think you kind of hit on it. I think I think if Ohio State could have their way, he would have been a 2019 or a 2020 kid. You know what I mean? That they could have, fit in one of their previous two classes where defensive back recruiting wasn't going so well. So just kind of, I think that was a numbers game this year. But yeah, really good player. We start out on one end of the rivalry. We'll continue here to number 11, which is a Buckeye, Jalen Johnson, Cincinnati LaSalle. Safety, linebacker. I think he's a linebacker. He probably won't like me saying that, but and it's not a knock. I think his skill set is what teams are looking for right now in linebackers. I think they want guys who can run and cover, and that's what he can do. I don't want to go full on with the Darren Lee comparison because I think what we ended up seeing of Darren at Ohio State was pretty special, and that's a lot to put on a guy. But I think there are some similarities there coming out of high school as a guy who has a kind of a safety background, playing in space, and may have to outgrow that position and be more of a will type linebacker who can run and cover. But really, really great kid, really good player. I think safe. I think he's one of those kids that, is he going to be a first round pick? I don't know about that, but I think you're going to get a great kid, a great work ethic. And I think whatever he's supposed to get out of his talents, I think he will get. Bill, you've seen Jalen quite a bit too. What are your thoughts on Jalen?
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you. I think you nailed it. I think he's a guy, it won't shock me if he plays on special teams day one. That was my first introduction to him. I had heard about him before I saw him in person. And, I went to Huddle and watched his sophomore film. And I think the first play of his sophomore film, I think he runs down on a kickoff and just annihilates someone, and that was like, I think his first 4 or 5 plays were all him just striking people. You know what I mean? And in this day and era, I mean, we see a lot of drag down tacklers. He's a knockdown tackler. I mean, so I see him maybe on the field next year on the kickoff team, like day one. And then like boy, the way the game's changed, 10 years ago, he's a safety for sure. He's a too high, strong safety. The way the game's played now, you drop him into the box as a backer. He's a Court Williams type player, hopefully a Darren Lee type player. That'd be amazing. But, and I agree with you. This is a great kid, great work ethic. I love the program at LaSalle. Those kids all, they're taught to play the game the right way. They're all, really driven kids. So, I think Jalen is really safe, like you said. I think we know pretty much what we're going to get out of him and on and off the field. And I could see him as a captain someday. Maybe Justin Hilliard, maybe that type of player and that type of person.
Yeah, it's interesting. And LaSalle's been producing talent for a long time, but just the last maybe half dozen years, their hit rate's really high. Their guys go on and they play well.
Right.
It's not a lot. Right. There's not a lot of bust coming out of that program. Look at like what Cam Porter did with Northwestern this year, like no immediately. So I think they're producing college ready guys, both from a physical standpoint, but also from a maturity standpoint. I think the culture there is really good. So I think they're producing good kids that are, the learning curve isn't so steep for them when they get to campus, as we saw with Porter this year, Northwestern. But all right, so we're into the top 10, and we are actually staying at LaSalle with Devonta Smith, cornerback, going to Alabama, former Ohio State commit at one time. We don't disagree a lot, and I don't know that we even disagree so much here. I know you had Devonta. We kind of combined our lists here and kind of came out with like an average type of thing, and you had Devonta a little bit higher than I did. I had obviously still think Devontae's a great player. Just you seem to have him a little bit higher. You seem really high on Devonta. What have you seen out of him? To have him, we have him 10, but you had him even higher than that on your list.
Yeah, he was a guy that when I first came across him, he was looked at as a wide receiver. And, 90% of the film was him as a receiver, 10% as a DB. And I thought, man, I love the skill set as a corner, but on film, he kind of looked like a 5'8" guy, and then you see him in person, he's not at all. He's all 5'11", 6 foot. Another guy from that program that I just think, and maybe I overrate those kids because how highly I think of that program. And it's funny because there are so many programs across the state that you and I become really close with. We know the coaches, we know everything. I am not that close with the LaSalle program, but I respect Coach McLaughlin so much for the type of kid that they produce. And so maybe that was part of the attraction with Devonta too, is, if Devonta was at another school, maybe I wouldn't have him as high as I do. But those guys just, they get you. Those kids from LaSalle, man, I believe in those kids. Now, he's got a great skill set. You don't get offered by Alabama and Ohio State, if you don't. So, but I think he's going to be like Jalen, and whatever Devonta's talent is, that's where he's going to be. He is not going to be a diva that's going to fall short. He's not going to be a goof off. No character issues at all. He's going to work his tail off. So Devonta's going to be whatever Devonta's supposed to be. And I think he's got to compete. And I think coming from LaSalle, I think he's that. I think he knows what he has to do. And I'm expecting big things from Devonta.
Yeah, I really like him as well, as especially again as a kid. He's a great kid, and he'll get whatever he's supposed to get. It's gonna be a tough defensive back room there in Alabama, but that's a pretty good place to go for a corner right now. Alabama, Ohio State, they're churning out a lot of corners. So, it's funny. We didn't set it up this way on purpose, but we have a theme here right now. We're down to the fourth kid on this list that we're talking about, and we're still only on the second high school. Number 9 is Marcus Allen, wide receiver, Clayton Northmont. One-time Michigan commit, a late flip to Wisconsin, signed with Wisconsin. Me personally, and again, this is probably a guy that Bill's a little more familiar with than I am, but I thought Marcus made maybe the best leap in Ohio of the class from junior to senior year. I thought he had an unbelievable senior season, and this was not a guy that I probably would have vouched for in the top 10 after his junior year, but I sure as heck think so now. Bill, what do you see? Look, I think this is the next really good play. Like the next, Lee Evans, Danny Davis, Ohio receiver goes to Wisconsin, has a great career. I think he's going to be really good there.
Yeah, I think it's a good choice by him. If you're going to play in that system, you're going to have to block as a wide receiver or you're not going to play. And he is a big physical dude. And I agree with you because, we were talking about the night I went to see Sammy Anderson and I saw Rod Moore. And it was like, wow, this guy can play. They were juniors. And, the coach at Clayton Northmont told me, hey, I got some younger kids you want to keep an eye on here, Rod Moore, Marcus Allen. I don't remember a thing about Marcus, and I'm being perfectly honest. And then, this was early in his junior year. And then you see the film at the end of his junior year and then what he did as a senior. And it's like, wow. And again, we, go back to the Ohio State thing. In a normal pre-Brian Hartline wide receiver year, I think Marcus Allen gets an Ohio State offer. I know they like him a lot, but when you look at the receivers they're bringing in, there just wasn't room for Marcus Allen. You know what I mean? And maybe he was the next guy in. If they lose Emeka Egbuka, say something happens and he goes to Oregon or something, maybe they turn to Marcus late in the game. I mean, they stayed in contact with him the whole time. So big physical receiver, loves to compete. And I think he made a great choice with Wisconsin. I also thought Michigan was a good choice for him too. I expect him to have a really, really good career there. And I think his guy could end up being an NFL guy. Love the physical nature of the way he plays.
Yeah, like I said, I was, I liked him as a junior. I didn't love him as a junior.
Right.
So I admittedly, he blew up like spring of his junior year, like after the season. He started to blow up and get, the Michigan and, the big offers. And I talked to we'll say it's a prominent college wide receivers coach. And I asked him about Marcus Allen. And I was like, are you surprised at this? I'm a little surprised at like how he's taken off. And I know Ohio State was starting to snoop around too. I'm like, I'm a little surprised by this. And they're like, no, I'm not surprised at all. I love the kid. And so I was a little slow to come around on that. And then, like I said, senior year, unbelievable. So well-deserved spot in the top 10. Yeah, definitely willing to admit I was a little slow on that one, but definitely think he's a 4-star type of guy and a top 10 guy in Ohio. Here's a guy that at number 8 that, I think, Bill, you tried to you were trying to act like you liked him more than I did, but I think I got you on this one. It's kind of funny. He's your guy, but I am also a huge fan. It's Darryl Peterson from Archbishop Hoban, defensive end, edge rusher, maybe outside linebacker, probably defensive end. Man, he's one of those guys. He's not like an athletic marvel. He's not like Zach Harrison. He's not like 6'6", 240. He's a little undersized, but unbelievable explosive first step, and just one of those guys who knows how to rush the passer, just knows how to get there. I really like Darryl. I know you do as well. You've seen him probably a little more than I do, just being up in that part of the state. But yeah, I mean, Darryl coming in at 8, what do you think of him?
Yeah. Again, it's another program kid, Akron Hoban kid, been taught to play the game the right way. They have the best weight program in the state, and this kid took full advantage of that. Just a winner. Yeah, he's not 6'5", long arm guy at all, but he is relentless. I mean, to beat this guy, you got to kill him, and I think he'll get in the Wisconsin program. I think they do best with a certain type of kid, and I think he's that kind of kid. This is the kind of guy we talked about, Jalen Johnson, Devonta Smith, great program kid. And whatever Darryl is supposed to be, that's who Darryl's going to be. He is, I'll be shocked to see him have off-field troubles or turn into a malcontent or cause issues. Or no, he's going to go there. He's going to work his tail off. He's going to do what they ask him to do on and off the field. And he's going to get every single thing out of his ability that he's supposed to get. And he's just one of those guys, again, we go back to Ohio State and, maybe a year where you don't get, the haul they got, and then they're looking to get JT Tuimoloau, Jack Sawyer's in. And so maybe Darryl is the next guy in if they wouldn't have got the guys they got, similar to Marcus Allen. So do I think he could play at Ohio State? Yeah. I would have taken him over, anybody that they got in the previous class. But this year they got an amazing haul of D linemen. So, there was no room for him. Can't take them all. But I think he could be an all Big Ten player someday in Wisconsin. And maybe a guy that takes 4 or 5 years to truly develop, but they love kids like that. So real high on Darryl.
Yeah, I wouldn't have blinked if Ohio State would have offered him. In fact, I would have been in favor of it.
Yeah.
But you have Sawyer early, and then you know what they're doing here. They're making sure they got the room they need for Tuimoloau, and
Sure.
you don't want to put yourself in an awkward spot where he comes in late and now you're one over or something. And so I understand the mindset there, but I certainly, if they would have just offered him and then let the Tuimoloau thing fall as it may, then I certainly wouldn't have argued with that strategy either. So yeah, I'm a big Darryl Peterson guy, so I wouldn't be shocked at all to see him be an all Big Ten guy at Wisconsin. Okay, here's where it gets interesting. The top 7. And the reason it kind of gets interesting is we essentially had, I think, just about the same 7 guys in the top 7. It just was a little jumbled. There was maybe one guy was a little higher for you than for me and vice versa. But we're dealing with pretty much the same 7 guys on our list. And I think, honestly, that's where the gap kind of starts with, even with the national ranking. I think a lot of the national people kind of agree on a kind of a set 6 or 7 guys here. So it's kind of a matter of opinion at that point. Ben Christman coming in at 7 out of Richfield Revere. Obviously Ben is a Buckeye. I at one point had him in the top 3 in this class on my board. And it's not so much that he slipped. I think there were just some other guys who I felt maybe took off a little bit more from maybe mid-junior season on through senior year. I think very highly of Ben. I think, probably guard would be my guess, but I think he could be one of those great, 3-year starters off to the NFL. I think he could be a really good player. Bill, what's your take on Ben and just kind of, where maybe tackle, maybe guard, and where you think he fits in?
Yeah, it won't shock me if he plays tackle. I'm kind of with you that I don't think he's gotten much taller from when he was a freshman, really, when it looked like he was going to be a 6'7" guy. I like him a lot. And I think that maybe he's kind of suffering from us guys. I think maybe we had him like as a potential 5-star guy, and we got all the expectations and the hype. And, I think if we would have had him as a solid 4-star guy, which are the guys he win national championships with, maybe there wouldn't have been as much, like maybe some disappointment. Some people think maybe Ben didn't become what they thought he was going to become. Look, this guy's a heck of a player. I mean, he's a basketball player. He's got footwork. I like the size. And again, and maybe, you and I, we've been around so long that we really buy into the quality kid. You got to be a great player too. You can't just be a nice kid, but Ben is really a quality person. He's going to bust his butt every day. He's going to do whatever stud tells him to do. And he's another guy that I see getting the most out of his talent. I'll be shocked if we learn he has off-field problems or he's causing problems, or it's not going to be that way. He's a great teammate. He's going to work his tail off. I am not going to be surprised if he ends up starting 2 or 3 years as a right tackle. That won't shock me at all. So solid guy, great fundamentals, great technique. And I think he's a guy that'll really benefit, from the competition he's going to face every day in practice, going against Sawyer and those guys. And he will take to coaching and, he'll do what they tell him to do. So I see him as a multi-year starter at Ohio State.
Yeah, and you kind of hit on what I was going to, wrap this up with on the competition thing. I don't know that he was ever pushed playing at Revere in kind of the schedule they play. Kind of a smaller school. They don't play a lot of the big schools. They're not up there playing Solon or St. Ignatius or anyone like that. And, sometimes for a lineman, when you're just bigger and stronger than everybody, it's got to be hard to kind of develop going against, 5'11", 195-pound defensive ends sometimes. And I don't know that, I think that kind of plays into it a little bit. I think now going against guys his size, equal athletically and everything else, I think that's going to do wonders for him. I would imagine it probably got a little stale going against maybe the size of defensive ends he was going against at Revere. So I would be surprised if he wasn't a multi-year starter, to be honest. I just don't know if it's going to be a tackle or guard. I mean, they'll figure that out. Number 6. And so we kind of talked about, you had Devonta Smith, I would say not significantly higher than I did, but enough that it wasn't just, 1 or 2 spots higher. It was several spots higher than I did. Here's my guy. This is the one I'm probably higher on maybe than anybody. Number 6 is Corey Kiner, running back out of Roger Bacon, going to LSU. Ohio State did offer, but kind of turned their attention to Evan Pryor and Trevion Henderson, and Corey ended up at LSU. I think I've seen him live. I know he plays small school competition, and I think between that and he's not going to be a 4-4 guy, I think those were some of the knocks on him. I think he is an absolute stud. And I actually think, obviously I'm sure there's people that maybe would have liked to see him at Ohio State. I think LSU is an absolutely perfect fit for his skill set. I think he's going to surprise people. I think he's going to be really good. I thought he was one of the, maybe not the top 3 prospect in the state, but I thought he's absolutely one of the top 3 football players in the state this year. And so I know I'm higher on him than most, but I know Bill, it's not like Bill had him, off the top 20 or anything like that. Just not quite as high as I did. Your thoughts on Corey, Bill?
Yeah, I just, I never saw him play football live. Okay. The film was really good, and I might have been kind of blinded by the quality of competition, the lack of competition he played. Now, that's not his fault. He can only line up and play the guys he can play. But I did see him at the Under Armour Combine in Cincinnati, and he's just not a combine kid at all. You know what I mean? He's a football player. So is he Clyde Edwards-Helaire? I mean, I never thought he could be a guy that could really catch the ball in the backfield. But you had told me, when you saw him live, that he was a lot more versatile than what people think he is. So I looked at him as more of a Cam Porter, to be honest with you. Not that there's anything wrong with that. Cam had a heck of a year at Northwestern. But that's kind of how I saw Corey, but you kind of don't think that's a fair comparison.
Well, I mean, I had the same concerns that a lot of people had, and then I saw him in a playoff game. He had like 5 touchdowns and like 300 yards, and he's not 4.4, but let's say he's high 4.5, low 4.6, but he is that in an instant. He's actually much more explosive than I thought. And I think if you go back and if you kind of watch the film in chronological order, you actually see sophomore to junior to senior, he's running away from people a little bit more. The angles are getting erased a little bit more. You can see the speed improve, that he's hitting top speed quickly. And yeah, he was catching them. He made a couple of acrobatic catches in the game. So I came in liking him as like a fringe, maybe top 10 to 15 guy in Ohio. And since that moment and following up after that playoff game his junior year, to me, I'd probably personally have him, 3 or 4 in Ohio. I think he's really good.
Wow.
I think he's fantastic, but we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens at LSU. That one's going to be interesting for me to follow, because I think that's the perfect system, but we'll see. All right. We are into the top 5, and I think we both had this guy in the same spot on our list, but I know, this is where it got ridiculous, and we kind of, this 3, 4, 5 coming up here. We all had like 3, 4, 5, and it was just a matter of like putting them together. But number 5 is Jaden Ballard, Massillon, Washington receiver. Freak athlete, great run and jump athlete, basketball guy, legitimate basketball guy, like legitimate Division I basketball guy, if he wanted to be. Bill, that's your neighborhood there. Your thoughts on Jaden and just kind of, where he could fit in with this Ohio State receivers room, because gosh, you have to almost be a future first-round pick to play on this receivers room right now.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of, raw ability, he fits with anyone. I mean, he has got talent coming out of his ear. It was at the first game they ever put him in at Massillon. It was probably midway through his freshman season. He hadn't played much varsity, and they told me before the game, we're going to play this freshman wide receiver. Keep an eye on him. I mean, it was like the second or third play of the game. He caught like a 60-yard bomb where he ran by everybody, and it was like, oh my gosh. And I think I put something on Twitter at the time, but I think I just saw the next Devin Smith. And I mean, that's who he ended up being. I mean, he is so good, and he's so talented, and he is a combine measurable. I think you and I were standing side by side at Ohio State's camp. Do you remember when he got his offer?
Yeah.
We were down at the far end of the indoor facility, and Urban and Zach Smith were standing there. And I had seen Jaden a lot by that time. And I'm telling you, like I told, his coach, Nate Moore, I said, Jaden picked the best day to have the best day of his life. He made catches that I'd never seen. I mean, that was as good a wide receiver performance as I've ever seen down there. Johnny Dixon had a pretty darn good wide receiver performance, and we stood and watched that one together too. But I mean, Jaden was amazing, and he really had a great career at Massillon. In terms of raw talent, this guy's got it. He's going to have to be patient, and I hope Jaden can just come in with the right attitude. Don't expect to be the superstar, from day one. Now you got Chris Olave coming back that no one thought was going to happen. So Olave and Garrett Wilson are your studs. There's no way to keep Julian Fleming and Smith and Jigba off the field. G. Scott can play. We know Buka can play. So now just, Jaden's just got to be patient. Take to the coaching, listen to what they're saying. Don't listen to the people back home that are telling him he should be starting as a freshman. Don't listen to the noise. Block out the noise. Do what you're supposed to do. And Jaden Ballard could end up being a guy that sits next year and then finally explodes in a couple of years and ends up being a 3-and-out guy, goes to the NFL after not doing much his first year at all. So I think Jaden, it's all up to him. And I think he's got to be patient, because he's entering a room that is unbelievably stacked. And then you add to Olave coming back, and it's more stacked than we thought it was going to be. But in terms of measurables, talent, all that stuff, Jaden Ballard, he got in the right line when they passed out talent, believe me.
Yeah, this is going to sound illogical, but like it almost makes me nervous how easy it looks for him. And I talk about that football and I've watched some basketball stuff of his. I'm like, oh my gosh, this looks so easy. And it's not going to be that easy at Ohio State. And that's my, make sure. Yeah. And you said it more eloquently than I could, but that's my concern, is that everything has come so easy to him in terms of how talented he is that now he's going to really have to be pushed, and it's not going to be given to him, and it's not going to be a situation that you don't walk into that room and start this year. You just can't. I mean, the starting positions on that roster are taken. So, grind it out, wait your turn. And if he does that, I think he's got as much potential as pretty much anyone in this class that they have. So he'll be fun to follow. He's supremely talented. Number 4, Reid Carrico, linebacker from Ironton. I may have seen him a little more than you, but I know we've both seen him. We saw him in the state championship game his junior year together, and obviously he got back there as a senior. I'll start on this one and kind of let you kind of take off from there. But it was interesting. I've kind of admitted this before. The first time I saw, so I'm naturally skeptical of like the big linebacker from, middle of nowhere, Ohio. I think we've seen that movie a few times and it hasn't turned out very well for Ohio State. I think this one's different. And I didn't actually think that the first time I saw him. So I went to see him in a playoff game. Like it was like a second round game, his junior year, right when he was really, he was, the hype was at an all-time high almost there. And I didn't actually love what I saw. It just, I don't know. He wasn't as productive as I was hoping. And I know he gets a lot of attention paid to him at that, you're playing small schools. He's by far the most talented kid on the field. So teams are running away from him. They're doubling him, guys are cut blocking him. But I just was a little uneasy. And then, I got to see him again a few weeks later in the state championship against Kirtland, and he was fantastic, I thought. I mean, you were at the game too. He had like 15, he's all over the field. He was making plays, at the point of attack, at the line of scrimmage. He was running guys down. It was almost a different human. So it took me a second evaluation, but I eventually came around. Yes, this is a top 5 player in the state of Ohio. Yes, I think this is a potentially great player at Ohio State. Bill, I think you were probably a little quicker on him than I was, but just kind of what your thoughts on Reid from what you saw over the past couple of years.
Yeah, I thought the only knock on him would be the quality of competition he faced every week, but it's not his fault. He can only play the people, he's going to go to school where his parents have him going to school. So I thought he was safe, solid, dependable. So many guys in this class. I mean, they are, not just the Ohio State guys, they're such good quality individuals, and you can just see the type of person they're going to be. And that usually translates to the type of career they're going to have. Now, barring injury, I mean, I'll be shocked if Reid Carrico isn't a multi-year starter at Ohio State. And, I don't see why he won't be. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I'm with you on him. I think he's really got a chance to be so special. And he could play next year. I mean, I know there's a lot of linebackers ahead of him, but I think he could force his way into maybe that 5 or 6 linebacker role where he gets some time next year. It's not going to shock me to see Reid Carrico on the field next year for Ohio State. And eventually I see him as a multi-year starter.
Yeah, and I think he's versatile. I do think he could play a couple of the linebacker spots. I tend to think he's kind of that new age Mike. I think he's certainly physical and tough enough to hold up against the run, but he's not going to be a liability out there in space. He played running back at Ironton as well. He had a great career on offense. So he's got some speed. He's got some flash to his game, I guess, a little bit. He's definitely a candidate, I think, to play. He's in there. He's obviously enrolled. So he's getting in there early. And so some of that culture shock of, playing at a small school in Ohio will hopefully have worn off for him by the time fall camp rolls around. He's probably, he's an early contributor candidate for sure. Number 3, Lorenzo Styles Jr., wide receiver. Pickerington Central going to Notre Dame. Pick Notre Dame over Ohio State. Probably not the worst decision in the world for a guy who really wants to play wide receiver. I will take it to my grave that he is a first-round talent as a cornerback. I really think he's a Garyon Conley type of corner. but not what he wants to do. And certainly a great receiver as well. I'm not trying to take anything away from his receiver, but I look at him, I'm like, that's a rare skill set for a corner, but wants to play receiver. Notre Dame will give him that opportunity. I think they'll have a great opportunity there early. They lacked speed and skill on the outside this year. Brian Kelly even admitted that several times in interviews. How do you see Lorenzo? And, do you think receiver, corner, and, your thoughts on him at Notre Dame?
Yeah, I think with the school he chose, I think wide receiver is perfect for him. I think he's going to play next year too. I think he's college ready. And when I try to form my rankings here, it really can't, it almost came down to Styles or Ballard. And I think what had me move Styles ahead of Ballard was the ability that he could be a starting cornerback for Notre Dame in 2 or 3 years and then go on to the NFL. I think the multi-position thing is what kind of pushed Styles ahead of Ballard for me. Now going to Notre Dame, he's going to be on the field next year in some role, I would think. Maybe return guy, maybe the third or fourth receiver. So he might get a chance to play before Jaden, and we won't judge the better player until we see him after, 4 or 5 years. But I think the position versatility really struck me on Styles that, I really like him as a corner too. But I think he can have a heck of a career as a wideout. So that guy, he's valuable. And coming from that program, you know what I think of that program. I mean, those kids, man, they know how to pay the price and they know how to work. His dad, former NFL Ohio State guy, he knows what he has to do to succeed. So, heck of a player. I have such high hopes for him. We've seen him in big games, state championship games, where he ends up being the best player on the field. And he makes every play he has to make for his team to win. So I love the kid's ability and expect big things from him at Notre Dame.
Yeah, that was kind of a 3, 4, 5 was really tough for us. We had the same 3 guys in there and we're just trying to jumble them. You could really put those past 3 guys, Ballard, Carrico, Styles, you could put those 3 in any order. I'm not really going to die on that hill either way. So just kind of how that fell. We were in total alignment on the last 2 guys. I don't think number 1 is going to be a shock, but number 2, defensive lineman, defensive tackle, Big Mike Hall out of Streetsboro. I don't know that I could be more excited about a defensive tackle. I think he plays. I know he's going to come in a little late. I don't think he's in there early, but I could see him playing early. I would go as far to say I think he might be the most underappreciated recruit that Ohio State's landed in a while, because I actually think I value him as kind of a top 40 or 50 player in the country, maybe even a borderline 5-star guy. And I don't know if it's because he's quiet, if he's from, a program like Streetsboro, he's not from St. Ignatius or Glenville or, Dublin Kaufman or anything like that. I'm not sure what it is, but he didn't generate the amount of hype that I kind of feel he should. I think he's a prototype 3-tech. What do you think, Bill?
Yeah, I like him a lot. And I was told by, a guy we know, Marc Harris out of Raw Talent, kept telling me about Mike Hall. And I watched his film, and I mean, it was okay when he was a younger guy, and junior film, I think. It was all right. It was okay. And then I saw him in person at the Raw Talent camp they had in Cleveland. And Tony Alford was there. Doug Phillips, now the head coach at Youngstown State, was there. And, we were all kind of in a group watching this guy because nobody really knew much about Mike. This is right before the camp season started. And, I mean, everybody just kept looking at each other like, oh, my gosh, like you really have something here, in terms of he had just gotten offered, I think, by Kentucky or Cincinnati or something, maybe a couple of weeks before. So there was some hype starting to generate for Mike Hall. And it was after about 3, 4, 5 reps. And I'm thinking to myself that Tony Alford will absolutely go back and tell Larry Johnson, this is a guy for us, and not go back and say, I watched him, keep him on the list, keep him on the B list, keep him warm. we'll see. If we lose out on everybody else, maybe we'll go. No, you could tell that, man, was he athletic and he's big. I mean, he had so much to like with Mike Hall, and then it did translate on the field, his senior year. I mean, he's so good. I'm with you. I expect big things out of Mike. I think he can play him next year. I see him on the field next year, not as a starter, as a contributor, maybe the fourth tackle. But they like to rotate those D linemen. Larry Johnson loves rotating guys. And Mike, I think, will be college ready, physically ready to contribute next year. So I'm with you. I think he's got a chance to be really special. We look at some of these D tackles that we've really liked over the years, Davon Hamilton and Robert Landers and those guys. And I think he's way more talented than those guys were. Now, is he going to work as hard as those guys did? I got a feeling he will. I've met his mother, met his brother, kind of gotten to know Mike. And I think Ohio State's got something there. I think he's going to be really special.
Yeah, he almost is like it's funny you mentioned Hamilton and Landers. He's almost the best of both of those guys because those two guys are very different. I think he's got that Landers quick first step explosiveness, penetration, pass rushing ability in a bigger body, maybe not quite the body of Hamilton, but bigger, much bigger than Landers, obviously. I think he's every bit of 6'2", but he's long. He's got a huge wingspan. And he's so explosive and he plays so hard. And, I went and watched him late in the season, his junior year, when he would just kind of, the hype had really kind of started there. And I think Ohio State had just offered him a few weeks ago prior to that. And I think people were like, oh, really? Like Mike Hall, that's an interesting offer. And I immediately came back from that game. I'm like, oh, this is legit. This is not that's a good looking player. Let's throw out an offer and keep him warm. I could tell immediately that was going to be a guy they wanted. Just blew up the first 3 plays of the game, blew the play up on defense. And then he flipped. He played a lot of offensive line actually at his school, and he'd be 10 yards down the field, knocking people down. And I was just like, man, this guy plays so hard. He's never got tired. It was unbelievable. The consistent effort he played with was unbelievable. So I could not be much higher on Michael Hall. I think this is a guy that should have generated the same type of excitement that a lot of these other top 50, 5-star type of guys generated. And for some reason it didn't. And that's fine. People will be excited about him soon enough, I think. Big shocker at number 1. Jack Sawyer, Pickerington North, defensive end. Jack's my guy. It's kind of hard for me to, continue to heap praise on him. So I'll kind of keep it short. Look, he was, to me, his sophomore year was the best prospect in the state of Ohio, regardless of class, I thought, by the end of his sophomore year. Certainly Paris Johnson, I think, could have argued that, but you take a guy so Zach Harrison was a senior when Jack was a sophomore. And I thought Jack was a better, player as a sophomore than Zach was as a senior. And it's not like Zach is on a different planet athletically or anything like that. I just thought, 2 pretty equal athletes. One guy was already a better player. That's not me predicting he's going to jump Zach on the depth chart here at Ohio State this year. It probably won't happen, but that's the kind of guy I think he is. I think he's, like I said, I think he's, if you put the Bosa expectation on him, I don't think that's outrageous. I think he's going to play a lot this year and be an NFL guy. He's about as safe as a number 1 as I've seen, I think.
Yeah. We worked at competing companies for so long, but we ended up in the same spots so often, same games, same scrimmages. And now the first time I ever laid eyes on him, it might've been the first time you saw him, was the scrimmage we saw when it was, Zach Harrison. And remember Alex Williams really blew up.
Yeah, I had seen Jack in the summer. He was a 190-pound receiver.
Yeah, or kind of
receiver to 7-on-7. Yep.
I think it was an H-back or something.
Yep.
And his coach told us about him and everything, and you could tell right then. I mean, he was going to fill out and really be something special. So that was the first time I ever saw him, and then, man, everything since then has been amazing. And we were at the same game his junior year when he was playing quarterback, and just a great kid that will do anything he's got to do to win, and you love that about him. And that, I've been like jokingly and not jokingly calling him like the third Bosa. And that's what I expect out of Jack. If he doesn't get hurt, he's going to be an All-American someday. I mean, he's that good and he's that talented. He's that driven. So, if you're looking for any kind of negative, it would be that he opted out of his senior year. And then his junior year, they kind of used him mostly as a quarterback, and he did some third down pass rushing stuff. So maybe it does take him a little while, to learn the nuances of playing defensive end in the Big Ten, but I don't think it's going to take him all that long. I think he's a guy that'll catch up real quick. And I'm with you. He has to be on the field next year. And I know you got Zach Harrison, you got Tyreek, John Batiste, Tyler Pride. You got dudes there, but he's a dude. And he's going to be on the field next year playing. And barring injury, I think he ends up an All-American defensive end at Ohio State and ends up with a 10-year NFL career. Couldn't be higher on Jack. I mean, probably higher on him than – well, Paris Johnson I had up there pretty high too. But, I mean, he's in that elite area for me. When you list the top recruits that I've covered going back 20 years, he's in the top group.
Yeah, I think it's important to reiterate, it's not there. Yes, there's a level of polish there and a level of, maturity and things like that, but this is not just a finished product. I think people may think, oh, he's just further along in his development curve. I think there's still so much untapped potential there. I don't think people realize how athletic he is. He was hands down the best basketball player in this area of the state. He was the first basketball player in the Central Ohio area in his class to earn a basketball offer. So he is, and then allegedly, I never saw him play baseball. I've seen him play basketball. He's a fantastic basketball player. But allegedly he was a hell of a baseball player too, before he gave that one up pretty early. But we are talking about a mid-major, maybe a high major guy if he would have really stuck with it as a basketball player. That he is not just some, polished finished product that just dominated because he was just so far ahead of people, from a technique standpoint or something like that. Like, no, this is a guy who still has all these physical tools that Larry Johnson's going to get to work with, and is just an unbelievable run and jump athlete on top of everything else that he has going. So, that was a pretty easy call, I think, at number one. All right. Well, we went through it. We'll be on the site. The story's up on the site, so you can check out the list, the full top 25, our final top 25 for 2021. We'll have message board discussion. You can come on there and tell us how awful the rankings are and how we don't know what we're doing. You can also do that in the comments. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can also do that in the comments below and tell us how awful we are and how we screwed this all up for you. But hopefully, we were at least able to explain ourselves a little bit here, and people get a little insight into what we think of some of these guys. The one thing I would say, and I'll throw it to you, Bill, here in a second, just to kind of wrap this up. But the one thing I would say, I think this is actually the best Ohio class in quite a while, especially looking at the top maybe 10 to 15 guys. I think there's 10 to 15 guys here who could be really, really great college players, NFL guys. I can't say that I felt that way the last couple classes before that. I really can't. I can't honestly say that. So I think this is the best Ohio class in actually quite a few years. What do you think, Bill, as far as the whole totality of it?
Yeah, I agree. I love this class. I think it's so deep. I mean, when we look down at guys that we've got in the 20s, those guys would have been top 10 guys probably in the past 4 or 5 years. So, we'll see. I think the quality of kid here is so strong. And a lot of these kids are coming from, the top programs where, they're just taught how to play the game the right way, and they're taught how to handle themselves off the field and in the classroom. Other great group of talented kids, but also, some really good kids that I'll be shocked, if they don't get all they have in their talent. They're just not guys that you're looking here on this list and seeing potential underachievers. guys that have high ceilings but low floors. You don't see that with these guys. So very impressed with this group of quality of kid and quality of athlete.
Yep. Like I said, we didn't get as much evaluation opportunities we would have liked on these guys for their senior years. But we had seen we did get to see a lot of them anyway. And we saw a ton of these guys the last 3 years. So I think we're pretty comfortable with everything, but I agree. Like I said, I think conservatively going back 5-6 years anyway, best Ohio class in at least that long for my money. But, we always find out the answer eventually. So in 4 or 5 years, we'll know if that was legitimate or not. But that's my thought going into this. So we will see. Yep, we will be doing 2022 here in the next day or two as well. So look for that. We'll do the same thing. We'll explain ourselves. We'll talk about it, and you guys will have a chance to kind of comment and tell us how badly we screwed up. But we'll definitely look for that here in the next couple of days. And until then, we'll see you on BuckeyeScoop.com. And thanks for watching and listening.